Imagine standing on the edge of something you can never come back from. Not a cliff, not a door, but a moment. The kind of moment that historians will write about decades from now, when they try to explain how one of the most beloved royal families in the world fractured so completely, so publicly, and so permanently. We are living inside that moment right now. And most people don't even realize it yet. Let me take you back to the beginning. Not the beginning that the tabloids like to tell. The fairy tale wedding, the beautiful bride, the prince who finally found his person. No, I want to take you back further than that. I want to take you back to a little boy in a black suit, walking behind his mother's coffin on a gray London morning, with the entire world watching him grieve in real time. That little boy was 8 years old. He had no choice but to walk. No choice but to hold it together, no choice but to perform his grief in front of billions of strangers, because that is what it means to be born into the House of Windsor. You don't belong to yourself, you belong to the crown, you belong to the institution, and no matter how much pain is burning inside your chest, you smile, you walk, you wave, and you never, ever let them see you break. That little boy grew up. He went to war. He lost friends. He carried guilt that most of us will never understand. And somewhere in the middle of all that pain, he met a woman who looked at him and told him he didn't have to carry it alone anymore. For the first time in his entire life, someone was offering him a way out of the gilded cage. And he took it. God, did he take it. But here is the thing about cages. Sometimes, by the time you realize you were in one, you've already built 3 more around yourself. And that, in so many ways, is exactly what happened to Harry and Meghan. The early days of their relationship were something genuinely electric. You could feel it even through the carefully managed press releases and the choreographed public appearances. There was something real there, something raw. Meghan Markle was unlike anyone who had ever walked through the doors of the British monarchy. She was American, biracial, divorced, an actress, a self-made woman who had spent years building her own identity before she ever met a prince. She was everything the institution was not, and in the beginning, people loved that about her. The world wanted to believe that the monarchy could evolve, that it could open its doors and let someone like Meghan in and actually embrace her. But the institution is older than any individual inside it. It has survived world wars, abdications, scandals that would have destroyed lesser structures, and it has survived them all by doing one thing above everything else: protecting itself. The monarchy does not adapt to people. People adapt to the monarchy. And when Meghan Markle arrived with her own voice, her own opinions, her own way of doing things, the machine didn't celebrate her difference. It tried to sand it down. Now, I am not going to sit here and tell you that everything Meghan and Harry have said over the years is gospel truth. This story has never been that simple. There are 2 sides to every broken relationship, and the truth usually lives somewhere in the uncomfortable middle where nobody wants to stand. But what I will tell you is this: something went very, very wrong inside that palace. Whatever happened behind those closed doors was serious enough that a man who had dedicated his life to royal service, who had served in 2 tours of Afghanistan, who had buried his mother and then spent the next 20 years being the most popular member of that family, that man packed up his life, took his wife and newborn son, and fled to the other side of the world. People do not do that for nothing. The Megxit announcement in January of 2020 hit like a thunderclap. It was so sudden, so blunt in its language that even the palace was caught off guard. Harry and Meghan had gone around the institution entirely, posted their intentions on Instagram like it was a business statement, and essentially dared the royal family to respond. The response was swift, and it was brutal. Within weeks, they had lost their HRH styles for daily use. They had lost their military titles. They had lost their royal funding. They were, in the clinical language of the palace, being made to understand that you cannot be half in and half out. The monarchy is not a buffet. You cannot pick and choose what parts of the institution you want to carry with you into your new life of independence. Harry and Meghan moved to Canada briefly, then settled in California, Montecito to be precise. A quiet, wealthy enclave near Santa Barbara where celebrities and billionaires go when they want privacy but still want to be close enough to Los Angeles to keep their careers alive. They bought a $14 million home. They signed a deal with Netflix worth a reported $100 million. They signed a deal with Spotify. They hired a full celebrity management team, a PR firm, a security detail that was now being funded entirely out of their own pockets. They were building an empire, or at least that was the plan. And for a while, it seemed like it might actually work. The Oprah interview in March of 2021 was a cultural earthquake. 2 hours of television that stopped the world. Meghan spoke about her mental health struggles, about feeling so isolated and unprotected inside the institution that she had thoughts of taking her own life. She spoke about a conversation that had reportedly taken place before Archie's birth, where a member of the royal family had raised concerns about how dark his skin might be. Harry sat beside her and confirmed it was true. The world was watching. The monarchy was watching. And for a brief, devastating moment, the entire carefully constructed image of the British royal family cracked wide open on live television. The palace responded with their famous statement, a cold 4-sentence declaration that said simply that recollections may vary. 3 words, recollections may vary, that somehow managed to be simultaneously a denial, a dismissal, and a rebuke all at once. It was a masterclass in royal communication, which is another way of saying it was a masterclass in saying absolutely nothing while appearing to say everything. Then came the Netflix series in December of 2022. 6 episodes, deeply personal, with home videos and private photographs and Harry and Meghan speaking directly into the camera about their experience. It was raw in places, uncomfortable in others, and it confirmed what many people had suspected, that this was not just a couple who had chosen a different lifestyle. This was a couple that was genuinely, deeply wounded. Whatever had happened in that family had left marks that weren't fading with time. They were deepening. And then came the book. Spare, published in January of 2023, was a literary grenade thrown directly into the heart of Buckingham Palace. Harry wrote about a physical altercation with William. He wrote about his drug use. He wrote about conversations with his father that were painful to read. He wrote about his grief for his mother in a way that was so naked and unfiltered that even people who had no sympathy for his choices felt something shift in their chest. Whatever else you want to say about that book, it was honest. Brutally, uncomfortably honest in a way that royals simply do not do. And the family's response to it was silence. Not just polite silence, glacial, deliberate, telling silence. That silence has only grown colder since then. King Charles was diagnosed with cancer in early 2024. The announcement came suddenly, in the way that royal health announcements always do. Carefully worded, carefully timed, carefully managed to convey just enough information to satisfy the public while protecting the king's privacy. And something interesting happened in the aftermath of that announcement. People's sympathy shifted. Not dramatically, not overnight, but in that quiet, undeniable way that public opinion moves when the story changes. Suddenly, the narrative wasn't a powerful institution crushing an individual. It was a sick father being estranged from his son. And that is a story that lands very differently in people's hearts. Harry flew to London the moment he heard. He visited his father. There were photographs of him arriving, looking tired, looking worried. There were no photographs of a reunion. There were no statements about healing or reconciliation. He was there for about 30 hours, and then he was gone again. Back to California, back to Meghan and the children. And the distance between them felt, if anything, even wider than before. What nobody outside those walls fully understood at the time was that something had shifted inside the king himself during his illness. Facing your own mortality changes people. It clarifies what matters and what doesn't. And for King Charles, who has spent his entire life waiting in the wings and then finally, at the age of 74, stepped into the role he was born for, only to almost immediately face a cancer diagnosis. That clarity came fast and it came hard. He began to see his legacy differently. He began to see the monarchy differently. And he began to see his youngest son differently too. The slimmed-down monarchy that Charles has always believed in, a smaller, more efficient, more focused version of the institution built around a tight core of working royals, has no room in it for people who are outside the structure but still using the brand. And that is precisely what the Sussexes had been doing, whether intentionally or not. Every interview, every documentary, every book that referenced their royal connections was, in the palace's view, monetizing the monarchy while simultaneously attacking it. You cannot have both. You cannot take the crown's currency and spend it in a marketplace you're building specifically to compete with the institution that minted that currency in the first place. The legal and administrative moves that have followed have been quiet but surgical. The Royal Lodge situation that everyone focused on with Prince Andrew was actually the more visible part of a larger rearrangement. The more consequential piece is what has been happening with security, with official residences, with the letters patent that govern royal titles. There is serious, credible reporting that the king has been reviewing the framework under which Archie and Lilibet hold their titles as prince and princess. Not to strip them necessarily. That would be too blunt, too visible, too easy to turn into a headline about punishing innocent children. But to clarify, in legal language, exactly what those titles mean and, more importantly, what they don't mean, what rights they confer, what access to the institution they represent. The answer, when that clarification is complete, is likely to be very little. This is what insiders are calling the Great Erasure. And it is far more chilling than any public announcement or tabloid headline because it is happening in the language of bureaucracy, in the fine print of royal warrants and ancient legal instruments that most people will never read and most journalists will never fully explain. It is the institution doing what institutions do best, not fighting, not arguing, not engaging. Just quietly, methodically, removing the threads that connect you to it until one day you reach for that connection and find nothing there. In Montecito, the atmosphere is reportedly tense. The Netflix deal has expired. The Spotify deal collapsed years ago. The speaking circuit, which was supposed to be a cornerstone of their financial independence, has been inconsistent. The Archie Foundation has had mixed results. The brand that was supposed to launch 1,000 opportunities has struggled to find its identity in a market that is brutally competitive and absolutely unimpressed by titles alone. Hollywood is full of famous people. You need something more than a story to sustain a media empire. You need a product. And the product that Harry and Meghan built, which was essentially their own experience of the royal family told through their own lens, is a product with a limited shelf life. The American audience that embraced them so warmly in 2020 and 2021 has undergone its own evolution. There is a fatigue setting in, quiet but unmistakable. The average American viewer who was genuinely moved by the Oprah interview, who felt real empathy for Meghan's descriptions of her isolation, who rooted for Harry to find peace, that viewer has now watched several years of content and interviews and projects and has started to ask a question that is uncomfortable but unavoidable. Are they okay now? Because if they're okay, if they have the house and the money and the children and the freedom they said they wanted, then what exactly are we still watching? The sympathy economy runs on suffering, and the moment you appear to have resolved your suffering, the audience moves on to the next story. Meanwhile, back in London, the contrast could not be more striking. King Charles, despite his illness, has continued working. He has shown up. He has done the visits and the speeches and the ceremonies. Princess Catherine, who faced her own devastating cancer diagnosis and treatment, emerged from that experience not with a book deal or a documentary, but with a single, carefully considered video message that moved the entire world to tears with its dignity and its grace. William has stepped further into the role of heir apparent, more confident, more settled, more clearly the future of the institution. The monarchy, against all the odds that people had predicted for it, is actually holding. It is actually surviving. And in surviving, it is quietly making the argument that Harry and Meghan's departure, as painful as it was not the catastrophe that some predicted. The machine kept running. That is perhaps the most devastating thing of all for Harry to reckon with. Not that they hate him, not that they've cut him off, but that they continued, that the institution absorbed the loss and carried on, and the empty space where he used to stand has been filled and smoothed over, and the world has adjusted. He was not, despite everything he believed, irreplaceable. None of them are. That is the entire point of the monarchy. The institution is always bigger than the individual. The crown outlasts everyone who wears it. And the family inside it is not a family in the way most of us understand that word. It is a structure, a mechanism, a centuries-old machine designed to perpetuate itself above everything else, including love, including grief, including the happiness of the people trapped inside it. Harry knew this. On some level, he has always known this. His mother knew it too. And it destroyed her, in the end. Not the car crash in Paris, but the years before it. The isolation. The way the institution closed around her and then cast her out when she became inconvenient. He watched it happen to her. He spent the rest of his life trying to process it. And then, whether he meant to or not, he watched it begin to happen to his wife. And he ran. I understand why he ran. I think most people, in their honest hearts, understand why he ran. But understanding a choice and living with its consequences are two entirely different things. And the consequences are arriving now. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in the quiet, grinding, relentless way that reality tends to arrive when you've been postponing it for long enough. The question that everyone is now asking, in London, in Los Angeles, in every corner of the internet where people follow this story, is whether there is any path back. And the honest answer, the one that nobody in either camp wants to say out loud, is that it depends entirely on what they think going back means. If going back means returning to royal duties, returning to the institution, returning to the life they left, that door is not just closed, it has been architecturally removed. It no longer exists. King Charles has made sure of that, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. The institution cannot survive perpetual uncertainty about the status of its own members. But if going back means something smaller and more human, a father and a son in the same room, a family at a table, the kind of quiet, private peace that has nothing to do with titles or duties or press releases, that door, I believe, is still there. Barely. Hanging on by hinges that have been tested beyond their design. But there. Because despite everything, despite the books and the interviews and the Netflix series and the lawyers and the legal instruments, they are still father and son. And that is not a relationship that bureaucracy can fully erase, no matter how meticulously the paperwork is drawn up. Whether they will find their way to that door before it is too late, before illness or time or simple human stubbornness makes it impossible, is the only question that actually matters now. Everything else is noise. The titles, the security, the houses, the foundations, the brand deals, all of it is noise. Underneath all of it is a family that broke apart in front of the whole world, and two people on opposite sides of an ocean who both believe, in their own way, that they were trying to protect the people they love. History will decide who was right. But history is cold comfort in the middle of the night, when the people you love are unreachable and the bridge you burned is still smoldering somewhere in the distance, and you are left wondering whether any of it at all, was worth the fire.